Hello. It's just not little old me. I've got my partner in crime is back. Welcome to WWA tonight. WA Property. What is rent vesting? And I reckon there's probably a few people out there that actually don't know what rent vesting is. So we're going to have a chat about that and what that means and what it is in relation to property. Just a bit of a quick reminder of our Midwest region. We're going to quickly make reference to that. I'm up in Geraldton, came up yesterday and caught up with a couple of people today, and I made reference to how things are progressing with the Seroja. So we'll just quickly touch on that. Our regular segments, of course, OD stats on the sales and rental market. We didn't do that last week because he was away. So we'll get stuck into that this week. Discovering your WA property answers. We had some really good questions the last couple of weeks. And today, I don't think it's any different. We've got a couple of good ones that we'll look at. And OD's favourite segment, what's on the notice board? That's coming up. Got a couple of little doozies for that as well, that'll tickle your fancy. And we'll review the property headlines. Sheds get a mention, as does buying versus renting. We'll probably include the buying versus renting in our segment about rent vesting. And we have some thoughts about a new segment. And I think it should be interesting, perhaps particularly for those people, not necessarily WA people, but people that are looking at WA for investment or to reside in WA. And so we've got a little segment that we're going to bring to your attention and just see what you think. And of course, as always, we like to, big finale, we always like to finish with an if question. So I'm TV, he's Oscar de Souza, and welcome, mate, to yet another segment, another episode 65, would you believe?
65, Tony Vine, that must almost be your age.
I really thought that. As soon as I said that, I thought, I guess what he's going to tackle. Yep, grey, and but I can tell you that I've had a bit of a check, and everyone's pretty happy the way I'm going with my health, so I'm okay. I'm all good.
Yeah, but is it your age? Is it your age?
Yes, I'm probably closer to the other age, but yes, I am still 65. Yep.
Right. Well, mate, as always, it's great to be here. It's great to be back. Obviously, I missed last week, and I needed to. I apologise for the lighting behind me. I think I'm appearing quite yellow.
Yep.
And that's some bad lighting surrounding me at the moment. But no, mate, it's great to be here. I noticed a very consistent canine theme in the start of the program. Like, there's my dogs actually are all over all the pictures that you've got there. So I'm sure there must be some sort of reason to that, apart from the fact that.
Well, there is, but before we do that, I will just let people know that wondering what we're all about. So what we do is we talk and exchange views and opinions and enjoy a laugh, and hopefully provide an informative broadcast focusing on WA property. And we're available. Obviously, we do a live stream tonight, but then we also have available a podcast which comes out on all your favourite platforms. That'll be available every Wednesday. And we always welcome your questions. You can do that via the live chat line if you're checking out the stream, the live stream. Otherwise, we have access via our Instagram page, our Facebook page, and also our Twitter account. And we just enjoy doing what we're doing. Getting back to your question about the dogs, last week, because you missed out, what's on the notice board? It was World Be Kind to Your Dog Day. I think something like that. Spoil Your Dog Day it was. Right. So because I've been so busy, I haven't had time to update a new promo video for this week. And so that was what I had on last week to promote the Spoil Your Dog Day. There you go. Fair
enough. Mate, WA, without us talking it up, because we're here in WA, and I don't know, maybe sometimes we do talk it up a bit, but WA absolutely is the place to be at the moment for so many reasons. There's COVID lockdowns just about all over the country. We're now moving into some pretty special weather, and I had a cousin text me or message me just in the last 24 hours who's not really tied down where she lives in Melbourne, talking about, look, there's no COVID over here in WA. The weather's good. Property's affordable. I'm really seriously thinking about moving there. investors, there's no question that investors have started to come back into the market. But with what I want to chat to you about a little bit later on, and the mining sector and where that's going, and therefore the demand for housing, our market's just really getting started, both on the rental side and on the sales side, in terms of the demand for property, the lack of supply, and this growth period that we're currently in, and what I really think is going to continue. So there's Rentvesting, like you said. There's the stats from the last week. There's so much good stuff going on in WA, mate, and we're really, really fortunate to live here. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, and you know what? Today I've really welcomed the opportunity. As I say, I drove up yesterday. The weather was unbelievable. That is another issue that's in itself. But just I had a number of appointments today and catching up with people, and to talk to the people up this way, both in a business sense, but also finding out what's going on. It is really, really interesting, and it's also interesting with regard to what we've been talking about for some weeks now, let alone months. And so other than what we do on a regular basis in the city, it's really good to get out there and get to the regions and talk to people like up here in Geraldton and with what you're saying. And you're driving up that coast, as I said to you before we went on air, when I pulled up to Jurien yesterday, I felt like sitting there on the foreshore there. We stopped and had a bit of a break. And the weather was glorious. You think, I could do this. I could stop right here and spend a few more days here rather than keep going. It was just, no, it's pretty special what we've got to offer, and we've got plenty to talk about. Hey, just quickly though, I will tell you, Jade has said to say, hey, Oscar, lighting is fine. She's just looking forward to hearing your insights.
What? I'm looking at something. Who said that?
Jade Fox.
Oh, really? Oh, right, Jade. Oh, well, welcome to the show, Jade, and thank you for that. And JB, I'm looking at something that's on your screen, and he's mentioned the fact that I'm looking rather ghost-like today.
Yep.
And as I said, the lighting behind me is absolutely horrible. So if you're going to watch, mate, you're going to have to put up with this for the next 40 minutes because I can't do anything about the lighting. But I can't wait to share my views on WA real estate.
Mate, just quickly, other than that, you weren't around last week, but with regard to how's everything going, how's things going? Like, you're in property management, that's your business, dedicated property management.
Yeah.
How has that actually been going over these last couple of weeks?
Really good.
Because you're hearing a range of messages with regard to it. Well, that obviously something you could probably raise in your stats. So maybe rather than answer that question, what about if we just go straight into the segment and go to the very important segment? Let's go, my friend. It's all yours.
Oh, yeah. I'm only going to start this segment if you promise me that you're going to change what you just did then, mate, because that little time warp, little Star Trek number, it doesn't fit at all with the stats that I'm about to talk about.
Okay, all right. I'll rethink it then.
That said, okay, TV, you know what? I if we replay what I've said for almost the last 2 or 3 months, right now for the next 4 minutes in terms of the stats, I must be starting to sound like a broken record, because no matter what happens in our WA market, no matter if there's a week where the volumes seem to come down, or the real estate agents are talking about there's not investors around, or there's a bit of an increase in rental supply, no matter what happens, whenever we see some sort of a change that seems to signify that things might be slowing down, leveling off, the stings coming out of the market, all those sorts of sayings, the following week's stats override it and blow all that out of the water. So again, with what I'm looking at in terms of our sales, in the last week, just in the Perth metropolitan area, another 860 sales. We know that a very strong market like what we've had for pretty much 12 months is 800 to 1,000 sales a week, and sometimes even more than 1,000 sales a week. And back in the day, going back a couple of years, a normal regular market was between 500 and 600 sales. But we've been consistently between 800 to 1,000 sales for well over 6 months now. So that's what we've had in the last 7 days. This time 12 months ago, this week 12 months ago, we were at 662 sales. So, and it was pretty busy back in August last year. Yeah, so 860 sales again in the last 7 days. Listings, this is a really interesting stat. Our listings have dropped below 8,500 listings. And at one point in time, it almost crept back up to 10,000 listings. And we actually thought that our level of supply was going to start meeting our level of demand. But our listings, again, through this winter period, surprisingly, have actually dried up again. Our listing stock is down, but there's still lots and lots of buyers around. So at under 8,500 listings, we've got too few properties and we've got more buyers than there are available properties. This time 12 months ago, there was almost 11,000. There was 10,795 listings available this time 12 months ago. And at 8,459 as at today, that's 21.6% less stock available today than what there was 12 months ago. So that's it's a bit alarming actually, because also what I know is that over the next 3 months, we're going to move into our spring selling season here in WA. And that's when our market, whether in the Perth metro area or even regional, that's when our market really does go gangbusters. So it's going to be a very, very busy period. Rental market, again, still very, very consistent. Another 757 properties leased in the last week. This time 12 months ago was 907 properties. I'm not suggesting that the rental activity has declined at all. All I'd say is that compared to this time 12 months ago, we've actually got less properties to rent. So therefore the volume's actually down. It's not because the demand has dropped. We've just got less properties available to rent. And in fact, there's 15.9% less properties today than where we were at this time 12 months ago. So we just come out of the COVID period 12 months ago. The rental moratorium on evictions and rent increases had come into play, and we had a very tight rental market 12 months ago. Today, we've got almost 16% less available properties than what we had 12 months ago. And for our Geraldton fans, if you're a lucky Geraldton renter at the moment looking around for a rental property, you've got a grand total of 53 properties to look for in the whole of Geraldton. So that's well undersupplied for Geraldton. And you know, we at one point thought that the Geraldton market might be easing a bit so far as rentals are concerned, but it just doesn't look that way, TV. It's a very, very tight rental market there as well.
Can I just interrupt with that? Because I'm in Geraldton, I obviously had an opportunity to talk to, as I said, clients today and a variety of phone calls about different things. I'm sure there was a sign outside the border, the Perth, the Geraldton border to say, I've entered town, because there were some people I haven't spoken to for ages and rang me today to talk to me, but which I love doing, of course. But with regard to what you're talking about, I had 2 or 3 different scenarios that have come up in the last 48 hours. One was a client's contacted me because our Champion Bay Settlements office is doing a settlement for them, for a property they're buying. They are people that have moved from Sydney to here, and settlement's due, but they've since been contacted by the sellers, who are now asking for an extension because materials for the building, that they're building a new home, this is the sellers, the materials they're waiting on has been a delay, which in turn the builders are saying there's going to be a delay on your house being available. And of course, the catch-22 is our sellers, our buyers, who are our clients, they have got a rental property and they have made a commitment to be out of their property by a set date because they've got everything ready to go. And so you've got this catch-22 whereby the sellers are waiting for their home to be built, which they expect to be done by now. And of course, as we've discussed on several occasions, and it's well documented about the delay with materials, etc., and that's been going for a while. So that's just one example. I had another client of mine today who's got a business. He's now looking and considering buying a property for his staff, because he's got people here who can't rent, so he's trying to get new staff in. Can't get rentals, so he's looking at buying a property and setting a rental up for them, and he'll subsidise some of that rental just so they've got somewhere to live. So that's that scenario. And then I've got another scenario where I've got clients who want to buy. This is all in the last 48 hours. Another client who's rung me up to concern because they've got a property they want to sell, but they've got tenants in there. They're at a stage in their life where they're ready to just cash up a little bit. Their rental property they've had there, lovely, but these people tenants are pleading with them not to sell because they've got nowhere to go. They don't know where they're going to go. They can't get rental. So it's three very different scenarios, but very much the same sort of issues that we keep on talking about.
Yeah, mate. Excuse me. In terms of the lining up of people that are selling for people that are building and those that are buying and those situations that you just mentioned, I've got a couple of those that I'm dealing with myself down here in Perth, very, very similar to what you said. So I'm sure that's not the only ones that exist in WA. I'm sure there's plenty more of those sorts of examples. But look, TB, this is where I think that we're actually going to see some change as we approach the end of the year in the rental market anyway, and that is when COVID first happened, and over that first 6 months, the government came out with all these stimuluses, if that's a word, for the construction sector, and that really had that spilled over to be a bit of a design and construct or a bit of a new building boom. So land sales across the state went through the roof, and builders absolutely went bonkers all the way through to the end of last year with people signing up so that they could get the benefits of these grants. What I'm actually seeing now, and I've got 2 meetings just this week alone, where people are moving into the properties that they have built as a result of the grants, and they're not yet ready to sell the properties that they're moving out of. And so therefore they're putting those properties on the rental market. So what that means is that I can actually see, and it's only a couple of examples, but I'm sure it's happening in other parts of the state, that where people are moving into the properties that they've just recently built. And therefore, I can see that we're going to have a little bit of an increase or a little bit of a spike in the supply of rental housing. That might not be the case in Geraldton. It definitely is going to be the case down here in Perth. Is that going to dramatically impact our rental market? Because, is it going to ease the strain on supply? Probably not, because the demand is just so strong. So yes, there might be a slight increase in the supply of rentals, but because there's so much demand, is anyone really going to notice it? I don't know, maybe not. But I've noticed the trend myself with a few clients that I've been talking to that have now been, and also till the end of the year, that have lined up properties for me to rent out for them because they're moving out of those properties and into their brand new constructed properties.
Just with regard to that, I made mention that Jade was following us tonight, and she's asked a couple of good questions, really. Can you provide, now you may have already done this and she may have missed it, but can you provide the difference in the vacancy rate compared to this time last year?
I can do that. So the vacancy rate, the vacancy rate right now compared to, no, that's a good question. I don't know the answer to that off the top of my head, but I do know with certainty that the vacancy rate as at right now is tighter than where it was 12 months ago. So I don't know exactly what the figure was 12 months ago. I know right now that we're bang on 1% in terms of the vacancy rate, and that's basically in WA. And I know that the vacancy rate was not as tight 12 months ago. So that might mean that it was closer to 1.5%. Maybe it was 1.5 to 1.7%. It was still very, very low, but it wasn't as tight as what we've got now.
Yep. And the other question she's asked, in fact, she's asked a couple. I've seen that the listings have dropped compared to sales, so you feel that this will continue. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so basically, and when I'm quoting the listings, I'm quoting the listings in the Perth metropolitan area. Actually, no, sorry. Those listings that I'm talking about, they're statewide. So statewide in WA. So when I'm talking about the listings have dropped a bit, I'm talking, that's basically from a couple of months ago, because we did see them spring up to almost around about 10,000 listings through the state. And it's still a low level of listings, but it was the highest that we've seen probably for a good 12-month period. And we actually thought that now the amount of buyer demand is starting to equal the number of properties that are available. But, and this is the surprising bit, that number has dropped back down to 8,500 or just under 8,500. And the most surprising bit about that, TV, is the fact that we're in winter. And winter is, and especially the winter that we've had down here in Perth, winter is always the quietest period of the year. But to still be having the sales and transaction volumes that we've had is, I think it's a bit unheard of, but it's even more so an indication as to what our spring selling season is going to be like. So Jade, I know, is out there selling houses, and she works in a really good team that sells lots of houses through Geraldton. What you guys have done in the last 3 to 6 months, I think, is only the beginning. And I think get ready to get run off your feet from September onwards through to the end of the year. I think it's going to be very, very, very busy.
Yep, which is interesting because I touched on last week, because you weren't available last week. You had your commitments, but there was a question, and I don't say that. I'm saying that in a nice way, for a change. But I made reference to a headline that was suggesting that is the property boom, the property boom's waning. But I think that's more. I suggested that was more the fact that it is winter, the weather, particularly in Perth, the weather we've had. Has been pretty miserable. But I will confirm, based on that conversation that I had last week, or my comments that I made last week, I had a classic example of a young friend who was selling his property privately. And he sort of contacted me and said, "Oh, TV, I've done a couple of home opens and hasn't been a lot of activity. This weekend just gone," and remember the weather in Perth, this is in Perth, this weekend, the weather, as we all know, was pretty special in Perth on Saturday and Sunday. On Saturday, he had his home open. He had over 30 people, couples, whatever, came in and did have a look at his property, and had another 14 or 15 on Sunday. And remember the derby, the football derby was on. Yeah. He got an offer on the weekend.
Yeah, right.
The minute weather, all of a sudden his whole reaction, the whole thing changed. And that sort of, to my way of thinking, confirms what you've been saying for a while. Come spring, these things could turn around dramatically, and it could be a challenge.
Yeah, not could be, TV. I think it's a certainty. It's absolutely a certainty. The other thing is a good mate of mine who's a real estate agent through Perth for a long time. He mentioned to me, not only does the weather bring out more people in home opens, but just in the last week, when we've actually had some good weather, just driving around the suburbs that he sells in, he's noticed a lot more people out in their garden, or a lot more people painting their properties, or servicing their retic, or doing things that typically people do when they're actually going to start getting their properties for when they're going to start, getting their properties listed and sold. So unless I've got this horribly, horribly wrong, I think WA, I think Perth, I think the Midwest is in for an absolute bumper from now through till the end of the year. I think everyone's going to be very, very busy. So, that's going to be good for the sellers. It's going to be good for the real estate agents, and for those that are buying and selling in the same market. Well, it's also a good time for you as well. So, hold on to your hats.
Well, we've been trying to get a new staff member as an opportunity to, a career opportunity, in my opinion, and we're having very little success with what we're sort of looking for. I might add, we're not being inundated by applicants either, and we haven't made a decision yet. It's a very interesting time when with what we're trying to do, and I've talked again, speak to so many people in different fields, different professions, different industries, and they're all got the same issue: can't get staff, cannot get anybody. Yeah, and it's very.
We haven't even touched on the mining sector yet, TV. No. But what was on in Kalgoorlie over the last couple of weeks? I think last weekend. No, maybe the weekend before, was what's known as diggers and dealers. And that's a big, massive, almost like a mining convention or otherwise known as a massive mining piss-up that happens in Kalgoorlie, where all the mining companies go, established mining companies, up and coming. A lot of pitching happens to prospective investors. And the biggest thing that came out of that from, I know a few people that went to it, the biggest message that came out, there's no concern over what's in the ground. There's no concern over their ability to mine it. And there's no concern over the prevailing level of demand for it. The biggest concern that they've got is staff, is the labour force. And where are they going to find the people that they need in order to keep up the production for the level of demand that's out there? It's as simple as that. And with our COVID borders shut and looking like, you know, there's mumbles about, oh yeah, but even if we achieve a 70% or 80% vaccination rate, are our borders still going to remain shut? That's going to be an interesting conversation, because we need people to come into the state. There's lots of jobs around in your industry and in many other industries. And if people aren't coming into the state, that problem is just not going to go away. And we're going to miss out on a lot of economic opportunities.
Yep. I'm just looking at the time. We've got a bit to do. But, Jade, we've got a couple of questions you've also asked, which we'll put those in our Discover the Answers segment shortly. So we'll get back to those. Yeah, I love it. Okay, our main topic tonight was, what is rent vesting? And I thought, I read a piece about rent vesting, and I thought, you know what, that's a really good little topic that we could discuss, because there's probably a lot of people here in WA that aren't necessarily aware of rent vesting. I mean, it probably speaks for itself, but I thought, no, let's talk about that. And while I've got my buddy on board, I thought it'd be a good little topic. So we've got about 10 minutes. We'll review that.
Well, can you do me a favor? Can you do the summary of it, and then I might ask you maybe a couple of questions about the constraints or the challenges or the risks associated with it that other listeners might be thinking about?
So rent vesting, basically, the strategy behind rent vesting is exactly as it sounds. It's you're renting a property, and living in that property, but rent vesting allows you to invest in property. Now, it's an opportunity. In some cases, what they generally suggest is that when you may be in a location that you're renting, and it's a suburb that you really, really love living in, but it's probably outside your price range when it comes to buying. But one of the other strategies behind rent vesting, the advantage of rent vesting is that you're not getting much return on your money, and you want to get into the property market, but you're buying a property for investment purposes. So you're getting a rental property, you're buying a property for rental purposes. You're generating an income, and that income is an important factor with regard to your loan repayments, particularly in this market that we've got now, where we've got a low interest rate. You've also got a low return on your money in the bank. So you've got some financial resources, and you'd like to get in the property market, but you're thinking living only, and you love the suburb you're in, but it's not a suburb. It's a suburb you can afford to rent. It might be close to your work. It might be where all your friends are, et cetera, et cetera. But you don't have the ability to buy there. Then rent vesting is an opportunity where you still rent, still live in the environment you love, where you're near your cafe, etc. But you then get into the property market another way. It becomes an investment property. So it's not such an emotional attachment, but it's an opportunity. It may be your stepping stone to get to that home of your dreams, or that suburb of your dreams down the track. But this is an opportunity for you to do that. You may be someone in New South Wales or Victoria going, you know what? I'm in a situation here where I've got resources here. There's opportunity. We've talked about this many times in WA. Maybe I want to move to WA at some stage. Well, maybe I don't. Maybe I just want to invest. But to invest here in New South Wales is too expensive. I'll invest in WA, and I'll sell my property. I'll cash up, and I'll invest in WA, and I'll rent a place still and achieve something that way. So that's in simple terms what rent vesting's about.
Okay, so it's not about renting a property in an area that you want, ultimately that you're actually going to buy that property, but you're starting off with renting it. So it's not that, but what
No.
you're saying, no. So what you're saying is it's basically you invest in properties wherever you can afford, wherever you think that there's going to be capital growth and good rental return and all that sort of stuff.
Yep.
And whilst you're doing that, you go and rent a place wherever it is that you want in a desirable location or a coastal location, and you can just continue to pay rent there and live exactly where you want because your investment strategy in property is tied up in the other properties that you've bought. So is that basically rent vesting?
That is exactly that. And in actual fact, I have, obviously won't mention names and I'll be careful what I say, but I've got a connection who's done...
Speaking of being careful with what you say, you haven't done your disclaimer, have you, buddy?
Oh, did you hear about my disclaimer last week? Oh,
no.
Deary me. Now, for those...
Did you say contact?
No. Contract. I went to contract. I couldn't believe it. After I said it, I went, oh, no. So for those remembering, we do a live stream now, of course, but then tomorrow our podcast will be available. So please understand why I've got to read this out. General advice disclaimer. The information on this podcast is regarded as general advice. What would I do without you? Your personal objectives, needs, and financial circumstances were not taken into account when preparing this content.
Yay.
We always advise and recommend you seek personal, professional, and financial advice tailored to your specific individual needs before making financial, property, and investment decisions. And exactly what we're just talking about now with regard to rent vesting, that would be a classic example. You ensure that you get independent advice, get someone to assist you, speak to a property manager, e.g. Oscar D'Souza, and speak to your accountant if that needs be, or speak to a property consultant that can assist you, and have a look at that scenario that's going to suit you. That may not suit you because maybe you've owned your home and suddenly you're going to be a tenant. That's not something you're familiar with, and you don't like that idea. It's not everybody's ideal.
Yeah, that's right. It's not for everyone, but it's a pretty popular thing, TB. I've recently come into contact with a client, and probably about 3 weeks ago, and he has got his place that he has lived in for 5 or 6 years. But then, because of the government grants, he saw that as a good opportunity over the last 12 months. So he what?
Jay just congratulated me on my disclaimer. I got it right.
Oh, right, okay. Yeah, no, that certainly does need an acknowledgement, mate, because normally you cock it right up. Yeah, so anyway, so this guy, he's got his property, he's taking advantage of the government grants because he can financially get ahead with that. It's like a really good saving that ultimately he'll make on the build price. So he's built a little 3x2 villa or something like that, and him and his missus are going to move into there. So they're going to rent out they've both got their own places individually. They're going to rent both of those out and give them to me. They're going to move into the other place for, I think, 6 months. It has to be a minimum of 6 months in order to make sure that they qualify for that particular grant. And then after the 6 months, then they're going to give that property to me to rent out for them as well. And they're going to go and live probably beachside in an area that they haven't got $2 million to spend on a house out there at the moment, but they certainly can afford $800 or $900 a week in rent, and get all the benefits of living in that particular spot whilst they've got their 3 investment properties that have in good capital growth areas and earning a great rental return. So it's a pretty popular concept.
Yeah, and the other thing being is it's a great concept in this market because of the low interest rates. You know, if you've got money and you'd like to get into property and think, oh, well, that's not where I want to live. I'd like to get in property, but I can't afford it. Hang on, think outside the square and consider rent vesting. So do what you're doing, living the lifestyle, as you say, that you want to live, but then the opportunity. Of course, the other thing that is that when you're buying, and it also allows you to buy not necessarily where you're living. You may buy interstate or you may buy regional. So that's what I'm saying about New South Wales and Victorian people. They might turn around and say, gee, I'd like to do something in WA. Well, rent vesting allows you to do that. If you're renting, for example, but you want to get into property, go, well, this is way out of my league. But the opportunity, as we've said before, WA is very affordable. The other scenario with rent vesting the other issue with rent vesting is that we talk about downsizing. It may be someone who's planning for retirement. Now, the rent vesting, this is another scenario because I started doing a bit of research, and retirement planning could be part of this plan. So you could be in a big family home, the kids have all left, you've got another 7, 8, 9, 10 years before you plan to retire, and you turn around and go, you know what, we've got a lot of money tied up here. We could sell this property, you could rent, or you could go whatever else you might want to do. You might go into a retirement village, who knows? Some of those places where you can do, and you can rent, and then you can then shelve some of your cashed up, then you can shelve some of that money into one, might be 2 investment properties, depending on your return on your sale in a good market. And that allows you then cash up and build up your retirement funds. So there's a whole range of things that can benefit out of rent vesting.
Yeah, there's many ways to skin the cat, TV, but I think the most important thing that you mentioned in your disclaimer, the most important thing with all of this, though, and particularly with something like, retirement planning, or even for a younger person that's just working out what's the best way forward for them based on their financial goals, go and get some independent advice. That could be the best thing for you, because if you're getting independent advice, the assumption there is that the person is qualified. It obviously is mandatory that they need to be independent. You probably need to pay them a fee, but for what you pay them in a fee versus the advice that you get and the financial benefit you get out of the advice, it's a no-brainer. It's worth its weight in gold. So strongly recommend to go and get some independent advice as to how best to plan for your future and achieve the goals that you yourself want.
Yeah, very much so. And you've got to sort of couple of things that I wrote down. You've got to be careful that when you do look at that scenario, the property you buy, you be aware of maintenance and ensure that you don't buy something that's falling apart and you've got a low maintenance issues. And as I said, it's not for everyone, but you've got to consider you're not looking at it as a property to buy to live. You're buying it as an investment property. So take away that the emotion of it all and consider it as, what is my ideal investment? And as I said, WA, if you're someone from the East Coast, for example, and you're entertaining a different scenario, then WA is the option. Of course, then it's a bit contradictory to what we've just been talking about. If you're considering selling your home and renting somewhere when there's not, rental is a bit tight at the moment, but it's certainly an opportunity, and certainly for first home buyers, you may not necessarily be a first home buyer to live, but it may be an opportunity to get into the home buying market and be, as I said, a stepping stone for the future.
Yeah, and the other thing being as well, I touched on the mining sector briefly before, just because of we know at some point in time the borders have to open. We have to get to a point of COVID management. If the disease or doesn't automatically go away, and we know, well, it looks like it doesn't, then we just have to learn to live with COVID. So at some point in time, there's going to be our vaccination targets hit. At some point in time, the borders are going to go open, and at some point in time, we're going to have a lot more people coming into WA for various reasons, and a lot of those reasons will be obviously because there's a lot of jobs here. There's going to be a lot of employment, so that's going to place a further pressure on housing, and so our market has got a long way to go, and investors have been looking around and probably been a little bit nervous over the last 12 months, probably mostly to do with COVID, but now they can see the demand for housing is so obvious in WA. Some investors have gotten in early over the course of this year, and I think they've already done very well. But I really think over the next 12 months, we're going to see a lot more investment from people outside WA that will be investing in WA solely for the purposes of investment, because they know that the demand for housing and our rental market is just going to stay very, very strong. So unless our mining sector falls over, that doesn't look to be like it's on the cards.
Well, roughly our values have gone up by about 11%, I think, over the last 12 months. I think that's where I
in WA? WA?
Yeah. So remembering too that you know, the predictions, and what I was going to do is do one of our episodes and review what we discussed 12 months ago and what we're discussing now and what the papers are saying now and what they're saying 12 months ago. But I think they're predicting around about 15%, and I think we've sort of thought it might be higher than that. But we haven't peaked as much as it was first thought. It's still busy, but so what I'm saying is I still consider it very affordable. I still think WA property is still very affordable.
Yeah, WA property is very affordable by WA standards, but even more so, it's much more affordable by New South Wales standards, or New South Wales, Victoria, Brisbane. Like it's such a great and affordable part of the country. We've got a great climate. We've got a great mining future. We've got a great wine region down south. There's so much stuff going for it. It's not just one thing. So and again, for the real estate people out there, like Jade and other agents in Geraldton, but I really think throughout the rest of the state, make hay whilst the sun shines, because from now through to the end of the year, if you want to be busy, you'll be very, very busy.
Jade has just made mention that she'd like us to drop her an email, because she's got some friends in Victoria that would be, what we've just been talking about would be very interesting to them. And so I said to her that between the two of us, we'll get some info to her that might benefit her with some friends she's got in Victoria. So there you go. Awesome. Hey, we'll finish that topic, and we'll go. I think it's now time for Discover Your Property Answers.
No notice board.
There's one segment at a time. I know you're excited. I did say to Jade that I'd go back to her. She's asked a couple of questions earlier on, and I said, look, I'd mention those in this little segment. But she made, one of the questions she asked was that, do you know how long it is taking for a new home build to take in Perth? Have you got any idea? I think at the moment it's a bit like how long's a piece of string, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, down here in Perth, what I can say two things. Down here in Perth, they were always able to build homes quicker than in Geraldton, and that goes back 12 months ago, or even a couple of years ago. Like in Geraldton, if it would take somewhere between, say, 7 and 9 months to build a property, in Perth, it would comfortably be around about 3 months less than that. So Perth, because we just had a greater availability of labour, and then also a greater level of building materials to be able to do that. So we move a bit quicker down here in Perth. That said, at the moment in the current market, it's very, very difficult to put a number on that. I do know some builders that are still able to turn around things, between 7 and 9 months. Like, you're not going to get anything built in 6 months. So really between 7 and 9 months from start to finish. But realistically, if you were planning a build, I don't think you'd plan anything under 12 months at the moment. You've got all the planning and all the usual stuff to go through. But then we here in Perth, just like the rest of the state, have got a shortage of supplies at the moment. Things like timber and I think steel. We've got a shortage on our supplies, and it's going to take a while for that to subside. So, if you're looking at building, I wouldn't be thinking a time frame anything less than 12 months. If you talk to some builders, they'll say, no, it's more like 2 years. But realistically, I would have thought 12 months.
Yeah. And Jo's actually made comment herself. She said the whisper she's heard is 3 years, but for Perth. But I'll get back to that. With regard to that question, is that the main issue for these delays, and again, I spoke to a tradesperson today, and we referred to Seroja and the Midwest region and what's going on there. Just a bit of an update with that, because I don't want people to forget. But one of my staff only yesterday, now remember Seroja is 14, 15 weeks ago, maybe thereabouts, have to be close. In fact, one of my friends has been driving around Australia since Roger. He's just got back. So that's how long it's been. She just got her water onto her property yesterday. Now, I go nuts when I don't get water for, I lose patience when I haven't got water for an hour. You have no water for 15, 16 weeks. She got her water, so her little boys and she and her husband have been relying on buckets. And people joke about, oh, we'll just get buckets of water. Well, you do that week in, day out for weeks on end, and then see how your sense of humour is going. It's not real special. So I can also tell you, I've heard that there's been some caravans arranged. And again, one of my trades contacts today that I was talking with, he's been looking at doing the checking them over for the electrical side, because they're going to provide these caravans to the Northampton and Calbarry residents who are still without homes, etc. And they are installing power poles to be able to plug the caravans in and got your power, away you go. Those caravans apparently are stuck in Geraldton somewhere, and I tried to find out today, but I ran out of time. But we're trying to find out what's going on, because apparently they have been on their way, but they've only got to Geraldton so far, and they haven't got to their destination. So there's still a lot going on. And getting back to Jade's question about building and Saroja, the discussions I have with different people today, we're still looking at these people and their homes and their properties another 2 or possibly 3 years. And see, again, another reference in another news article that the insurance companies were blaming the lockdowns because they couldn't get from the East Coast to do what they had to do over here. So there's a range of issues that obviously causing delay, but what people need to understand, those that aren't in these areas, there are still people out there who are struggling when it comes to that cyclone that went through when was that now? April? March? April? May, I think it was. May. I have to check. See, this is what I mean. We forget so quickly.
Yeah.
But it's a while ago, and there's still people well and truly are seeking. Another question I've got, which was sent to me during the week. Hi TV, we have put our property on the market privately. However, once we find a buyer, and funnily enough, they've since found a buyer, and agree on a purchase, on a price, as the sellers, do we need to draw up an agreement? And once that happens, who organises things from there? As the buyer's broker has asked us to get it all sorted. Now, would you like to answer that question, or would you like me to?
The buyer's broker.
So the buyer's broker's contacted the seller, asking them for a contract, and I've so I'll start off if you like.
Okay.
So the situation being is, for those that are wondering, and there has been a bit of private sales happening. We talk about the market and the real estate fraternity, but there are plenty of people, and I've certainly been involved with a lot of people assisting them with preparing contracts, etc., and giving them direction, both buyers and sellers, with special conditions. However, and I had a scenario recently where a seller had signed the contract and then gave it to the buyer to sign. And as I've explaining, what you need to understand is the buyer is presenting a contract of which the seller then is accepting to offer. So the buyer technically should prepare the contract or have someone assist them in preparing the contract. And that contract, once all the conditions, etc., are included in the contract, that is then presented to the seller for the seller to accept or not. And then when the seller then signs that offer, is accepting the offer, and contract done, unless there's any toing and froing with price or whatever. But generally I've found with private contracts, the people have verbally spoken to each other, they've agreed on their prices, etc., and then that's the case of putting it on paper. So in answer to that question, this came from Matt actually. So in answer to that question, Matt, the situation being is that technically the buyer presents the offer. However, if you're selling the property, and I've done it many a time for clients, I've assisted the seller in drafting up a contract. We've then presented that to the buyer, not sign it, but present it to the buyer. The buyer that can review it, the buyer can get their own independent opinion of either a settlement agent or a property consultant. And then once they're satisfied with those bits and pieces, they can sign that contract, then present it back to the seller, And as long as there's been no changes to what was originally arranged, the seller can then sign the contract off. It's pretty much that simple. And then once that's done, you'll get the contract to your respective settlement agent.
Yeah, so I agree with that 100%, TV. And I would have thought, you mentioned before that in this example, the buyer sounds like they've got a broker or a real estate agent or a buyer's agent or someone acting on their behalf. And if the seller is a private seller and not a real estate agent themselves, I would have thought that the buyer broker would have access to standard contracts that can be used, and therefore that would be a good starting point for the buyer and the broker to put together the offer for the seller's property, and then put that in front of the seller in order for the seller to accept or decline or to counteroffer.
Yep. And more often than not, you know, the settlement agent is, if you've got a settlement agent, then that's the person. If you don't have a property consultant or someone similar, then your settlement agent is the person that you would liaise with, because they can assist you with your special conditions. And more often than not, you'll find a settlement agent got some special conditions in a template form. They can talk it through with you, and then away you go. So that would be my advice. Certainly Matt had done that, but it sounded like the buyer wasn't very well prepared. And he's since rung me, and we've got it sorted. But it was a good question that he originally asked with regard to that. Mate, because of time, we'll stick to that question, and with a couple of questions that Jade sent. Jade, thank you so much. It's been fabulous to have you involved, and we really appreciate what your what the questions you're asking. I've got another one about GST. But
I hope the family's well, Jade.
Yeah, she's just come off maternity leave, is our Jade. So she's back on track. I've got another question about GST, but I'll follow that up next week, because now we've got another segment, and I think you like this one.
I love this one.
Yep, that is What's on the Notice Board, and this was Oscar's favourite little one, and you're going to love this. You will love it this week, because I've gone in and checked out our What's on the Notice Board, and I'm a little bit I'm self-indulging a little bit, because I've got two brothers, both younger than I, and one's got his birthday tomorrow, and the other one, who lives in Singapore, his birthday's on Friday. So to Dave and Jeff, happy birthday, boys. They're both getting old and grey. Not as old and grey as me.
What's this got to do with the notice board?
Well, what the notice board is it's not just birthday. With birthdays, and there's quirky little things, right? Get me?
Right. Okay.
Get
gotcha.
me? Excuse me. Stay up with it. This segment's been going for about 4 weeks, and you still don't know what it's about. For those that want to know what's on the notice board, we're looking for quirky, bizarre, fun, entertaining, special, and different little moments and celebrations and events. And if you've got a fete, you've got a business thing you're doing, or you want to promote your business, send it through to us, and we'll put you up on the notice board. That's what it's all about. But tomorrow is the 18th of August. So not only is it my youngest brother's birthday, but it's also Never Give Up Day.
Oh.
Did you know that?
Wow.
And I'll give you a little quote that I found, which I like. I'm a bit of a Nelson Mandela fan. It always seems impossible until it's done.
Yeah.
There you go. I thought you'd like that. And I made mention last week, but I think it's worth mentioning again, because there's been some great photos on social media. Wildflower season at the moment. Unbelievable good. So if you're out and about, or you intend to go out and about, don't keep it too long, because this warm weather, suddenly come end of August or end of September, it might be too late. So you want to get out there over the next few weeks, because there's some sensational displays, and I'm hoping to sneak out at some stage while I'm here. But Midwest region, Murchison, Gascoyne, places like Meekatharra, Mount Magnet, Yalgoo. Where else is there? Coal Seam. There's a whole range of places. So you don't have to travel too far. But if you're in the city, obviously you need to get in the car. But even going down Brown Highway, there's some great little looks along there with regard to the wildflowers. So should be a bumper. And today is Indonesian Independence Day.
Oh, my special day.
Yep, Indonesian Independence Day. That's been held since 1944 when Japan was defeated. Did you know that?
No,
1945. Did I say? Yep, 1945. So that's the go. But this is my doozy. I've got a doozy. On August the 20th, which is the birthday of my other brother, it is World Mosquito Day.
What happens on World Mosquito Day?
World Mosquito Day. Well, World Mosquito Day, they just celebrate because it's been going, and it's always on August the 20th. And did you know, I had some stats here somewhere. Let me have a quick squiz. I'll have to have a quick, where I had my running sheet. Where was it? So did you know that people killed by animals per year, 500 people are killed per year by hippopotamus, 1,000 people are killed by crocodiles, 100 by lions, 25,000 by dogs, 50,000 by snakes, and 725,000 by mosquitoes.
Oh my God, those little buggers.
How's that for a stat? How is that for a stat? So there you go. I got that from World Health Organization.
Some people, TV, would think you've got too much time on your hands. I'm not one of them. I'm not one of them, mate. But some people, in fact, most people would probably say that Tony Viner's got too much time on his hands. But I want you to know that I don't think that.
Oh, dearie me. I've got some other little... Well, Jade likes World Mosquito Day. She likes World Mosquito Day. She thinks,
and she's one of the people actually that thinks you've got too much time on your hands.
I wish I did. I'm a bit busy, mate. I'm a bit under the pump. I'll quickly do. We'll go to our quick next segment because we haven't got time to muck around. I keep on looking at the clock. But you haven't seen this one, but I'll show you this one that I'll do. It's time for the reviewing the property headlines. Just getting better all the time.
That's pretty good. That one's pretty cool.
Yeah. One of the headlines that I did take my fancy was tiny homes provide a roof for kids at risk of homelessness. Did you see that? So did
you say hopelessness?
Homelessness. I did say hopelessness, yeah. But more than 27,000 Australian young people experience homelessness each year, sleeping rough without a safe or secure place to call home. And kids undercover are looking at ways of doing that, and they've got these little homes that they can a little project, and it was on ABC online. So if you want to know about that, that was I thought that was a worthwhile little headline. And yeah, right. The other thing, now you made fun of me. Remember last year, probably around about this time last year, might have been later, we did a little episode about sheds, and you went, "Oh, sheds, yeah. Right?" Well, I can tell you there is a situation now where sheds are taking precedent, mate. People are looking at sheds because they are the pandemic is inspiring a backyard shed boom, and you know why? Because people are building them and converting them into their office space because they're working from home, so they don't have. Right. Yeah, so you might get yourself a shed and you might be able to have good lighting when you do your next podcast.
Oh, well, that might be, that might be pushing it a bit, mate. What's wrong with this lighting? Can you see a problem with this lighting?
Well, one of our followers said that you look like a ghost, so it was just an observation. But so there you go. That was a headline that came up with regard to which I found very, very interesting, and what people are using their ideas to convert these sheds and be quite imaginative with regard to that. So that was a little headline that I took. And the other little headline that I found really interesting, which perhaps we didn't really get to, is renting versus buying. Did you see that? I think that might have been in the West Australian, but I also believe Jude, my wife, pointed out, my little princess pointed out that was on the TV tonight as well, about buying versus renting, and suggesting that the marketplace to buy. But I think it gets back to what we were saying before, that doesn't suit everybody, and some people are comfortable renting for their lifestyle.
Yeah, I'm well familiar with the argument and the different conditions that and the pros and cons for both renting and buying. And Matt, I don't think there is a right or wrong. I think the great Australian dream of owning your own home is no longer as prominent a dream as what it used to be. And there's plenty of other ways for wealth creation, and you can do that through investment in shares or in property or in your business, and you can live wherever it is that you want. So I think particularly the last 10 years or since the GFC, people have been encouraged to think well outside the square, and that great Australian dream of owning their own home, I think has been expanded a bit. It's not as closed-minded as what it used to be.
Yep. Although that being said, again, I haven't got it in front of me, but the statistics of first home buyers Australia-wide I know we're talking about the building industry as well, but that has been quite significant, and that's certainly been a driver in the property market across the country, really. So we say that, but it's interesting as to what people are I still think it's a dream. I still think that people, I talk to young people quite a bit, and it's still something that they would, it's on their agenda. It's on their thinking.
Yeah. I'm not saying that the dream doesn't exist anymore. I'm definitely not saying that. I'm saying that it's not the only dream.
Jay just sent a quick message through. Is there not a requirement for a show approval for a shed now? There is, and there are specifics, but you need to check with your local council because they're all different rules. But if you're going to do any construction of any sort, then certainly we would highly recommend that you check with your local council to clarify what those building plans or building requirements are when it comes to anything you're going to erect, particularly a shed. So that's the story. Hey, that pretty much covers it all. So we've done all our little episodes. We've covered our topic about rentvesting, which again, don't forget, I've done a little note, Jade, that we'll ensure we get an email to you to help you and your friends in Victoria with regard to rentvesting. You may find that they're aware of it, but we'll certainly give you some information. If you've got any questions at all, please send them through. But we never finish a program without our very special segment, the if question. See what you missed while you're away for 1 week.
You know what, mate? You make my life better. You just make my life better. I'm a lucky guy.
Okay, your if question. If there's always something you wanted to do, what would it be?
What if there's always
if there's always something you wanted to do? So if there's something you've always wanted to do, what would it be? There's no science to this. If you wanted something you wanted to do, what would it be?
Create more time.
Oh, okay.
Is that too philosophical?
A little philosophical, yeah.
Okay, so you want me to be a bit more specific? If there's always something you're going to do, create more time. Go out on a date with my wife, a date, like an actual date. We've been parents for 10 years, and I don't know if we know what it means to date anymore.
My little princess and I, we had a date night a week or two ago, and we've made
rub it in. Mm.
No, yeah. Even our little grey-haired age, we still love doing a date night. And in fact, last week we made a point of going to breakfast on a Sunday once a month somewhere where the water is, and we went to Swanbourne last Sunday. Beautiful. Yep. Sat there and could not believe the people around the coast there. It was just mind blowing. It was like It was like peak hour traffic during the week, staggering. But it was fabulous. No, do that. You must do that. That's a very important.
What's the answer? What's your answer to the if question?
I
know.
Something...
It would be, yours would be spend more time with OD, obviously.
No, not at all.
No?
If there was something I always wanted to do, I always wanted to be a sporting coach. I always wanted to be a coach in sport. My brother does that, but there was always something that I wanted to do. But there was no reason why I didn't. I just went in another direction. But there was something I love doing. I love being able to teach young people, help young people, and I think you not only coach them in sport, but you're also teaching them life skills. So I've done a bit of that.
Though, mate. No, you're never too old. You could coach the people at the Bridge Club or at bingo. Maybe do a bit of bingo coaching.
You idiot. Hey, listen, we're coming to the close. It's been a fabulous, thoroughly. It's always a much better show when I've got you on as my co-host. And it was this week. I really enjoyed our segments and what we've done and what we've discussed. For those people that joined us, Jade, fabulous to have someone like yourself on board and the interaction. We thoroughly enjoyed. Plenty of questions. For those people that want to send us questions, if you only listen to the podcast and don't watch the live stream, then you can get access to us via our Facebook page, our Twitter account, our Instagram account, or of course you can send an email to Oscar and I via our respective businesses. But really enjoy doing what we do. Please enjoy. I think we've got some more wet weather coming up on Thursday here in Perth. But hopefully the weekend's a bit warmer. But for all those people out and about, for those that are buying or selling, don't forget to get independent advice and opinion. And we look forward for you to join us next week. We really enjoy what we're doing. Take care and look forward to seeing you all again next week. All good.